Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by Cal State Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. This is Webinar Wednesday number 354. We got a great special guest today. Who doesn't want to talk about the economy? Boy, I'll tell you, if economists were ever more relevant in the history of mankind, I don't know when. To what's up today, August the 13th, 2025. Well, it's been said before that it's the economy, stupid. And quit calling me stupid. Can't ever recall using stupid more than once ever in my life, but it's in this first bullet. It's the economy, stupid, made famous by Bill Clinton. And of course, I had to add quit calling me stupid in reference to the Police Squad and their sequel that's out now. So it's the economy, stupid, and quit calling me stupid. Our Kern Biz grants are due on Friday. So last week we discussed in depth a lot about the Kern Biz Façade and Security Grant Program. We'll give you a little bit of background on that and information. So if you still want to apply before the Friday deadline, there's still time. Our regular feature, the Capital Quarter. We're going to get into the merchant account mode today. Merchant cash advance is a program that's been around since the 1990s. Really, we'll give you some concerns and reasons why you might want to look and think twice. Our economic quarter yields our Webinar Wednesday resident economist in the house today, Dr. Mark Evans. I've often said that I'm not an economist, but I like to play one on the internet. Well, today we have a real one, so my play is unnecessary. So we're going to break out a new feature today and have our Webinar Wednesday alumni in the news. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the people who have been on Webinar Wednesday from time to time and share why they might be relevant and why they are our alumnus in the news for us this week. We will have news, information, some resources to help you thrive. Our Webinar Wednesday economist is here, but also our Webinar Wednesday producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, will be handling all of the chat box inquiries and items that are going to be presented and talked about today for your easy grab right at that particular time. So we'll also do a quick little poll today. An informational poll is this week's poll. And our poll questions are going to be a little bit conflicting, but here we go. Our first poll question is one that we have asked about a little bit lately. What we want to know is, for your particular business, what are you most optimistic about? Is it greater sales and profitability throughout the remainder of 2025? Is it improved cash flow, more opportunities, resilience, and survival? Or if you have something else to add, please go to the chat, and sometime during this presentation today, we will try to circle back and grab those. So just a little background of what you're optimistic. What is good about what's going on in your business? What do you think is a good chance for you to be and show some optimism? Greater sales or profitability? Improved cash flow? Do you think there's going to be more opportunities, potentially an expansion? Is there going to be a resilience and continued resilience and survival in your business? And jump into the chat box for one other. We have about half of you participating at this point. So let's give you a moment or two to jump in and tell us what you're optimistic about. We have half of you that are optimistic. Surely half of you plus one must think you're optimistic. Last chance, we'll end the poll and actually share these results with you. And most of you are optimistic about being resilient and survival. Survival mode for the rest of 2025, not a bad thing. That's 29%. But our winner is more opportunities and expansion. 36% of you have the more opportunities and expansion. 21% greater sales and profitability, and also Coming in tied is the improved cash flow and other. So thank you for actually participating in poll question number 1. And not to be contradictory, but let's ask poll question number 2, and that is about economic uncertainty. And what is your greatest economic concern today? Is it inflation? Is it uncertainty on what might happen? Is it recession, tariffs, or is it something other? So there's a significant, amount of uncertainty, economic uncertainty that's going on with things going on in the world. So is your greatest concern economic concern? Little poll question for the doctor today. Is it inflation? Is it just uncertainty and not sure what's going on? Is that your biggest economic uncertainty? Is it actually uncertainty? Is it recession or is it tariffs? And again, if you can add something else to the other, maybe it's unemployment. Maybe you're afraid AI is going to steal your job. Maybe your best employees. So if you have something to throw into the other, you can go there as well. We do have 62% of you participating, and we're going to give you one last moment to jump in, and we're going to end this second and last poll question on your greatest economic concern today. Inflation, uncertainty, recession, or tariffs. We're going to jump and end this poll with 64% of you participating and share the results. And the results, the winner is uncertainty. So your greatest economic concern right now is not knowing what may happen. Our number 2 is inflation, worried a little bit about prices moving up. Number 3 would be recession, 19% of you. Recession, 13% on tariffs, and 0 on the other. 0 on the other. So thank you for allowing us to ask that little informational question that might benefit the doctor. Okay, so that is our polls for this week, and let's move along. And let's talk a little bit about our Capital Quarter. Regular feature, we'll talk about a few things here about Kern Biz, MCAs, why you should get one, ? And first, the Kern Biz program, the Façade Improvement Grant Program that has up to $10,000 available. This is in the unincorporated areas of Kern County. So if you're within or your business is within the city limits of any city in Kern County, you are ineligible to apply. So there is up to $10,000 available. I don't think they're going to get a lot of applications from California City, we're sorry to say, with large amount of city limits of Cal City. It's probably not happening there. But for other areas throughout the county, if you are outside of the city limits of your particular city, then that includes Bakersfield, of course. You are eligible for up to $10,000 available for small business owners and property owners. It's a competitive one-time grant designed to improve the storefront investment. It's also an opportunity to improve and enhance business security, appearance, and to drive local economic development and attract new customers. So to find out if you qualify and what you need to do in order to meet the Friday's deadline, Maureen will have some information in there, or you can tap into that QR code right there. Part of our Capital Quarter also has been our continued involvement with the Small Business Credit Survey that's conducted by the Federal Reserve Bank. This slide and other slides were presented to us from the Federal Reserve after we were a partner and had over 100 of you out there respond to the questionnaire. And so given us our own subset of data, we think that that's really valuable. And so the one question we will look at this week would be the financing and credit products that were sought in the previous 12 months. So this would be, about a year ago or so. So you'll see that there are 6 different funding vehicles that were presented. The blue is our CSU Bakersfield respondents, which we had 109 response to this question. And the gray is other ones across the US. And you'll see that there are credit cards, loans, lines of credits, trade credits, merchant cash advance. Oh, how did that end up in there? Since we're talking about that today. And also leases. So equipment leasing and other forms of lease. So you'll see, and we'll focus on the merchant account. Here on the merchant account, you'll see that we're significantly higher, 7% compared to 5%. I don't know if that is a large enough sample size, but we do have 109 people. That's a large enough sample size. So we do have 7% over 5%. You know, my basic math skills tell me that that's about a 40% increase over national. Yes, 40% from 7% to 5%. So it's something that we're going to talk a little bit about today. So on our Capital Quarter, we'll talk a little bit about merchant cash advances. And they are an alternative form of business financing and provide cash in exchange for giving up future sales revenue. These are technically not a loan, or at least we don't think so, and they are typically serviced through automatic daily payments. Sometimes those could be a weekly draft, but oftentimes it comes directly out on a daily basis of your account. They're generally easy to qualify for, especially if the business has a constant stream of sales. It includes this fixed factor, not an interest rate, but a fixed factor, not an interest rate, that can actually be shown and actually has a holdback rate of some of the sales. And business owners, the popularity is they can receive them for as little as 24 to 48 hours. Sounds fantastic, right? Well, maybe not so fantastic. Because typically these are a capital source for cap-strapped businesses. And desperate times in a business that we find in working with so many small businesses out there lead to desperate measures. And it's inevitably followed by desperate consequences. So in our example here on how a typical MCA work, and again, that's a merchant cash advance, is that generally you will have credit card sales or other sales where you can actually see that. In our example here, we'll call it Kelly's Kookie Cookie Shop, which is going to really tie me up, I know. But Kelly's Kookie Cookie Shop has been experienced a sales decline with increased competition. Kelly was a little late to realize that bloated cost, maybe caused by inflation, has eaten away at cash reserves. Kelly went to lenders and couldn't get help. Saw an online ad from a fictitious business here called Damn Capital, and took 4 simple steps. 4 simple steps. There was not a credit check, and $100,000 was in my account, if I'm actually this Kelly, 24 hours later. So the cookie. Okay, I know, really bad idea on my part. Still generates about $135,000 in monthly revenue. So there's plenty of cash inflow available for repayment. So where could this go oh, look at there it is. Where could it go particularly bad? I just got my own $100,000 bill. Of course, not this one, because many of you learned on Webinar Wednesday, that one's worth $2.5 million right now. So I would take that one for this merchant account. But typically what we find is that the old saying of the devil being in the details, the total repayment of that $100,000 is going to cost me $128,000. Dam Capital will draft a daily payment that's going to come out of my account. And while the $100,000 might work well for my business for a while to alleviate the cash flow concerns, maybe I have back taxes that I have to pay, maybe other back payments that are due. And maybe that creates a little bit of cushion and time, but they're going to be taking an average daily payment of $675. So whereas my business on an average basis has daily sales of $4,500, the average daily payment is going to come out of there at $675 until it is paid off, which is going to basically take 190 days in this example. The typical range for these payments are generally 3 to 18 months, so you're paying them off over a very quick period of time, which if you have cash flow problems, enhances and creates more of a problem for that. This will translate into an annual percentage rate of 53.9%. Nowhere in this document, since it's not a loan, is it stated that you're going to be repaying 53.9%. You might have heard me in the past say, once you find out you're paying 53.9%, you want to pay it off immediately, but you're already prepaying the interest of $28,000 for the use of this money for 190 days. So what happens if my cookie company, you notice I didn't put a shop in there instead of the company, or didn't really want to go that way. But what happens if I suffer, I can't bounce back from this, and I jump into some form of, say, bankruptcy? There are new rules that are coming out, more court cases that are declaring that since these were obtained under duress, these predatory companies that actually do this type of funding could actually be held partially responsible. They might not need to be repaid, or could be discharged in bankruptcy or some other remedy. So there are some court rulings that are siding with harmed businesses, and there could be potential recourse. So MCA, if you have one, if it's creating a great deal of financial ill for you, we're sorry to hear that, but hopefully something could come good of that. We'll be looking also now right into potentially some of the things that are covered today in our economic corner, strategies for navigating economic challenges. Economic Corner is a regular feature also on Webinar Wednesday, but we really want to jump into if economic challenges come on a general level, recession or others, you really need to really look at some financial resiliency tools, and that's going to be managing your cash flow. First and foremost is we recommend, of course, our monthly cash flow forecasts to address the needs and to identify when you might have anticipated potential cash shortages. Also, other fun things that nobody likes to talk about are we have to cut costs and conduct a thorough expense review. It wouldn't be expensive actually, but the expense review to identify areas to where you can actually reduce spending at both work and home. Again, getting back to budgeting, not a popular subject anywhere. But also potentially build cash. So look for a way to maybe establish an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months, operating expenses, explore other financial options. One thing we always like to say on Webinar Wednesday is taking out a line of credit or looking for backup funding is great when you're in great financial shape. You might not need it then, but potentially there could be a rainy day, and having those funds available, albeit at a cost, could be something that is good for your business if it runs into troubled times, or there's a troubled economy, might create opportunities of less fortunate other souls for you. Also managing your inventory and freeing up some of those particular costs. And then there, of course, is our cash flow forecast. Always love to work that into Webinar Wednesday. We have that on Excel. If you want that, put it in the chat. We'll send it to you. Our Webinar Wednesday Alumni of the Week. Much of the great work done on the MCAs and working with distressed companies, and who was our special guest on 298. Ben Nicholson was on November 8th. Ben's from the East Coast, works with a company called Fortis Business, and is really a turnaround specialist who will bring back to Webinar Wednesday. You can go find him right now on our YouTube channel, but we'll bring him back if we run into some other economic issues that are creating ills for our businesses and some of the resources that are available. Some of our, if you're looking to get into more resources on Intro to AI in your business, there's a program coming up that's going to be happening on August the 19th from 10 to 11. There's your actually register. So put on by our regional office, UC Merced. The SBDC program is here to assist you and your businesses and help them succeed. One of those tools that we talk about today and we'll talk about frequently is our YouTube channel, where you can find our alumni of the week back on webinar number 297. So currently we're up to about 472 subscribers. And here is our 10 most recent webinars on our CSU SBDC YouTube channel. And look at that. There's our most popular ones of all time. Can you believe 13,000 views for small business micro lending? And so our most popular tools are right there, our webinars. You can search by either to find which webinar you might want to research and find. And hopefully there's one of these for you. Webinar Wednesday, again, great sponsors, the County of Kern, California. We're powered by SBA and the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, SinCal Business Finance Group, the College of Business and Public Administration, and the Blue Tech Valley program. If you have any business needs, go to our website, talk to one of our seasoned, confidential, no cost, no obligation experts, no cost to you. Let's get those businesses fixed, and let's bring in today's special guest. And our special guest is Dr. Mark Evans. He's an emeritus economics professor. He was with California State University, Bakersfield for over 40 years, served as the Economic Development Department Chair for many years, was the Associate Dean of the College of Business and Public Administration. He was elected to the CSUB Hall of Fame in 2023. All great accolades, but none could be finer than being Webinar Wednesday resident economist, Dr. Evans. Thank you for joining us. Come on in here, live in studio today. Good to see you.
Okay, Kelly, thanks for inviting me. After listening to your presentation there, I hope I didn't inadvertently put any tongue twisters in my presentation.
I will probably never do that again. There will never be another Kelly's
Kookie
company cookie.
Okay, well, at any rate, I'm glad all of you could join us today. And I wouldn't call it fun, but I had a really stimulating time just thinking about the topic today and figuring out what to do. So basically what we're doing is we're going to look at the tariff situation and compare and contrast the lenses that a typical economist views this through versus the lenses that President Trump is using. I think not everybody thinks we're playing the same game or they're playing it the same way. So I'm going to start by comparing what game the typical economist thinks is being played with international trade and tariffs, how they perceive the game, and then compare that to President Trump. So what we have here is I've made a distinction between what is the reality of what international trade is, and then how you play that game is going to be influenced by the game you think you're playing. So there's also the issue of the main players that are involved now. How do they perceive what they're doing, and therefore how are they playing the game? So there's 4 quadrants here, too, with is this basically a win-win positive sum game? By it, I mean international trade, or is it basically a win-lose zero-sum game? And then the rows indicate the major players in the game. How are they perceiving it in terms of what the game truly is? And I think what's going on is actually in all 4 quadrants to some extent. But I put an X here because as my own biased view is that for the most part, international trade is a win-win positive sum game. But I think in terms of how it's currently being played, I think it's primarily being played as a win-lose zero-sum game. So let's take a look. First, I'm going to summarize how the typical economist would view international trade. You may have seen this in Econ 101. What you have on the left there is that curved line represents the maximum production possibilities of an economy. If you use all your resources and you use them efficiently, what are the different combinations of crabs and pineapples, for example, that you could produce? The main insight of Adam Smith and David Ricardo was that through specialization and trade, you can actually consume a mix of goods that's well beyond your capacity to produce. Okay, and well, how big are these gains from specialization and trade? How big would they be, for example, for Kern County versus for, let's say, Canada versus the US versus Earth? Well, the smaller the region, for example, Kern County, our consumption mix is probably 100 times beyond what we're capable of producing by ourselves. Canada, it would be, there's much greater gains from trade than the United States because the US is larger. And then for Earth, there'd be no gains until Musk succeeds in colonizing Mars. Then maybe there would be some gains from trade there. And then the other way we would look at it is who's winning, who's losing, and do the winners win more than the losers lose? So for importing industries, what happens is households gain from the lower prices. The domestic industry would lose because of the competition, but economists have shown that the household gain is greater than the industry loss. So if you count if everybody counts, importing favors the nation. Exporting, you get the same result. The nation comes out ahead, but in this case, it's because the industry is gaining more than households are losing from the price increase. Okay. Now, what happens if you impose trade barriers? The price increases, your consumers lose, the importing industry gains, the government's collecting a bunch of tax revenues. If you add all of these up, what the economic analysis will show is that the losses outweigh the gains so that the nation as a whole loses. Not only do households lose, but the nation as a whole loses because households lose so much that it dominates the industry gains and even the government tax revenue gains all taken together. The reason for the losses, there's two of them. One is you're producing things where somebody else could produce them at a lower opportunity cost. And then secondly, because of the increase in prices, households end up buying a basket of goods that's inferior to what they were previously able to buy. Two of the big arguments are, yeah, but what about jobs? And then what about trade deficits? The way the typical economist would approach the job challenge is that we have a whole bunch of policies that we can implement. We have a whole bunch of goals, and trying to reach full employment through trade policies of mismatch. We can use monetary and fiscal policy to reach high employment, and then we could use free trade to achieve an efficient allocation of resources where we're getting the most benefit possible out of our resources. We don't really want to apply the wrong instrument to the full employment goal. And then the proof in the pudding is that we have full employment now, despite the large volume of imports. Trade deficit problem. We have this big deficit, all the money's going out. The way a typical economist, I think, would think about that is, yeah, but the money's coming back in terms of capital inflows. These capital inflows are really a major source of lending capital, both for business and for the government's large deficit. To a large extent, the trade surplus is our own fault because it's generated to a large extent by the government deficits, which is raising our interest rates and causing a lot of the capital to flow into the country. I have a trade deficit with Costco. Really doesn't concern me. Again, it's this thing that Costco has my capital, so after I spend my money with them. National security, I think your typical economist would say yes. There are cases where, or infant industries or emerging technologies, there's cases where you need to protect an industry either because of national security considerations or because it's such an important dynamic part of the economy. It's possible that there are critically important industries like AI that would need some protection in the short run because of the benefit is so much larger in the long run. But your typical economist would say, yeah, but there's potential in both these cases for people to claim they have a national security need, or that they are the industry of the future or whatever. So your typical economist would say that these things should be the exception to the rule rather than the rule itself. Don't let these concerns and protections for industries creep out of control where that's swamping the overall effect of the free trade. So let's look at it now from President Trump's lens. And so how do I do that? Because he says a lot of things. So I think basically look at what he's actually done rather than what he's said, and what seems to come out or that we can infer that's probably a focus. So here again, what I looked at is not only the agreements that have been struck, but I think especially if you look at the concessions or the exceptions in terms of where the tariffs are placed, it gives you a feel for priorities. But generally, I think he views trade as a win-lose, zero-sum game. Some reasons I think that would back that interpretation, the American First Doctrine. He definitely many times has said that deficits are basically indicate a weak nation, basically a defeat. This I think is I found this very interesting. But the whole that slate of retaliatory tariffs that he came up with, essentially what this is a leverage tool. Okay, so it's kind of like, give me X and I won't take Y from you. It's a type of, it's not like give me X and I'll give you Y, but it's more like give me X and I'll take Y. Well, what is he going to take? Well, largely, the concession would be I can apply this very, very large tariff on you, but give me what I want, and then the tariff you'll end up with is actually much smaller than that. And you'll be so happy because you don't have the huge, complete retaliatory tariff. Now, the thing that's different this time from all past trade negotiations is they tended to, in the past, be very narrow in terms of economic benefits, economic costs. Well, the leverage is being used for a whole host of non-economic goals. I think the major one is military and national security focus, but there's many others. Then the pullout from international agreements. For example, one of the Asian countries, what he pressed for is there's an upcoming vote in a United Nations committee on whether ocean-going transport vehicles should have to pay a carbon tax. So basically, Trump's position was vote no during that commission vote, and what I'll do is I'll give you a lower tariff rate. So basically, you could put a list of everything that I would like to happen. And then basically what the tariffs are is, if you want me to lower that retaliatory tariff, give me this. And he's negotiating with countries one by one because there's really a different possibility for each one in terms of what concession might be out there. So let's try to put this all together. What I've got here, some possible positions on international trade and tariffs. And then I've ranked your typical economics professor, I guess, how they would rate the importance of achieving that objective, and then how I think Trump probably would rate the importance from 1 to 5, and then just a little bit of an explanation for the rating. So first row we've been through, what is the fundamental nature of international trade? Your typical economist would say it's a positive sum win-win game, where two people are voluntarily trading with each other because if you give me X, I'll give you Y, and everybody's getting something they value more than what they're giving up. Where I think with Trump, it's again a zero-sum competition. Nations are rivals. I'm going to use my market power in trade negotiations just as bargaining leverage. I'm going to use tariffs as really a stick I can use in these bargains that are applicable to any goal that I really wish to pursue with that nation. Typical trade deal, it would be written, there'd be a transparent set of rules that would go on for hundreds of pages. A lot of these things we don't even know if there is a written deal there. Nobody's seen written deals. And then there seem to be press clips that, well, that's not what I meant. So who knows? Okay, we should be minimizing trade barriers. Typical economists would rate that 5 out of 5. I think Trump would rate it 1 out of 5, again, because it depends on whether you view trade fundamentally as a positive sum game or a competition. I think Trump would say that trade barriers are what trade's about is primarily relative strength of the nation. Interestingly, when you dig in, you find China-related things everywhere across many countries. However, again, there aren't written agreements there, but just reports of what was in them that really I can't substantiate, but just hearing what was part of the discussion with each country. There's probably at least a dozen, maybe more countries that part of the deal was something that had something to do with a concern with China. So I think this is a very large rationale for going into these negotiations and what he's pursuing. There should be a trade balance. Again, we talked about that. Economists don't worry about it because of the capital inflow in the other direction. Actually, one of the reasons for the trade deficit to begin with, because we have such a demand for capital inflow here. Again, in terms of statements, Trump is very concerned with a trade deficit. It's interesting that he doesn't look. We have a very large trade surplus in services, and he doesn't look at that at all. He's fixated on the deficit in terms of commodities, and I think that's a reflection of he's viewing it in terms of national security and military strength. But if you're going into a military conflict, you need to produce goods. Although with cybersecurity and everything else, I mean, obviously that's a concern now too. But the traditional thing is having a hotel that gets you to be a tourist here. That's just not that important for national security as if I'm producing a good. Jobs through trade policy, again, wrong policy as far as economists go. I think Trump kind of thinks imports represent job theft. This whole constellation of national security, military strength, industrial policy, supply chains, I really think this is the most important to Trump as #1 priority. And I think for your typical economist, you would recognize it has some value, and it would vary from economist to economist, somewhere in the 1 to 3 range. Tariff revenue, economists really don't rate that very strong, that we need tariffs to fund the government. I think it is kind of one of Trump's major concerns. An economist would say, yeah, this is a tax on the people. The people are actually paying probably 80 to 85% of it after everything washes out, where I think Trump would say, Well, first of all, what he says is no, people don't pay the taxes. But I don't think he believes that. But I think what he does believe is that yeah, that's true. But what they're getting in return is national security and national strength. Okay, so let's look at where we actually are. The tariffs were finalized August 7th, I believe. This is from the Yale Budget Lab. The average effective tariff rate right now is somewhere around 18.6%, trade weighted. After people make their adjustments in terms of buying shoes from the country where it's a little bit less expensive, et cetera, it's going to settle around, there's not going to be that much of a difference, 17.7%. Average price level should increase about 1.8%. It's going to take about $2,400 out of the average household. Shoes are going to go up around 37%, apparel around 39%. So those are the types of things that are going to get hit the most. The real GDP effect, probably GDP will be about 0.5% less than it would otherwise be this year and next year. Slight bumping up of the unemployment rate. End of year payroll employment, Yale thinks will be about 500,000 less than it would otherwise be because of the tariffs. Long run sectoral effects, this is kind of interesting, but manufacturing should go up over the long haul by about a little over 2%, but the spillovers are probably going to cause construction to go down by about 3.8%, or 3.6%. Tariff revenues, about 2.7 million tariff revenues are projected to be collected over the next 10 years. Now, what's real GDP done? What I've done is rather than report quarters here, I've collapsed quarters into half years. So what you see on the left is that the economy, for example, the second half of 2024 grew by 2.8%, went down to 1.2% over the last two quarters, one of them being a negative half and the other one being around 3% or so. If you look at it from the sales point of view, in other words, excluding inventory changes and inventory changes over the last half a year or so, aggregate sales, consumption plus business investment plus government, they've increased about 1.6. So it is a slowdown. Your chart on the right shows just how much difference the compound growth can make. You're growing 1% over 20 years. Your economy's roughly 20% bigger. If you're growing 3%, it's roughly 80% bigger after 20 years. Non-farm jobs. Again, on the left, you have the United States, and you see that the average monthly change over the last 6 months has been 85,000, where it was running more than 170,000 range for the 1.5 years before that. In Kern County, what I did, I tried to collect the same data, but I left out education in addition to farming because of if you're taking half-year growth rates, you're looking at some of your endpoints being December when teachers are working and July when they're not. So what you see here is that in the last half of 2024, we were generating roughly 500 extra jobs a month, non-farm, excluding education, where through the first half of 2025, the average month we see about 367 fewer jobs on average. Let's take a look at where these jobs are. This shocked me, but if you add all of these things up, you get the negative 367,000. But industry by industry, some of them are positive, some of them are negative. To me, what stuck out here, if you look at where the job growth has been, social assistance and healthcare programs, these are areas that are probably going to be vulnerable in the future due to the budget that was passed by the federal government. And if you look at the far right, we've been losing 300 jobs a month in the transportation, warehousing, and utilities industry, and then another 200 in retail and wholesale trade. So I think it's very possible that what's happening at the national level in terms of tariffs and trade, et cetera, is impacting us locally here, since we are just such a major north-south cog in the on the West Coast. Now, the prices have been increasing much slower than I think economists projected. I think the last time I was here, I projected the price level would increase about 1.7%. The budget lab just said 1.8 a few days ago, but prices have not increased that much. And I think there's just as you know, the business markups are shrinking because there's such a reticence to really pass on the costs. I think there's at least 4 reasons. One is the large pre-tariff buildup of inventories. The other one is just the uncertainty about what would eventually shake out. Nobody wants to pass it through, and then the tariff decreases and they get stuck losing all their market share. There's really important pending court cases that I'll talk about on my last slide. Basically, what's at risk here is if many of the tariffs are judged to be unconstitutional, then they're going to have to roll back. And then if you had raised your price and then that happens, you're just stuck out there. So what the kink in this demand curve, if you remember from Econ 101, basically what it's trying to show is that businesses are, if it's a kind of an oligopolistic industry, they're hesitant to raise prices unless they can figure out some way for all of them to do it together, because of the fear of it costing them because of lost market share. Where here there's also the fear of possibly the president coming after you. Okay, so I think the arm twisting as well. Here, May 17th, Trump warns Walmart against raising prices, tells company to eat the tariffs. And then April 29, furious Trump calls Jeff Bezos over politically hostile Amazon plan to advertise tariff surcharges on goods. So I do think that the price level will go up 1.7, 1.8% because of the tariffs. But if that was stretched out over 2 years, then you're only adding half that amount to the average annual inflation rate. Now, here's what's been happening. I'm a little surprised that the Consumer Price Index report that came out yesterday was viewed so positively in terms of inflation being damp or being good news on inflation. And the reason is it was reported that inflation over the last 12 months was 2.7%, which is just pretty much in line with what it's been. So it didn't indicate really increased prices due to inflation. But what I've done here is I've looked at both the last 4 readings of the PCE price index and then of the CPI index, both. And then I've computed the kind of like the annualized inflation rate just from the last month. So in other words, how much of prices increased in the last month, compound that 12 months to see what you get. And both for the CPI core, which everybody, the stock market went crazy yesterday because everybody was so happy about it. But if you pull out just what July did and then extrapolate it, you're at 3.9%. If you use that's core items, so it's taking out energy and it's taking out shelter because they move around so much from month to month. If you look at the PCE index, again, you're at 3.1%. So I think I think here it's very important to view the next couple months, but then to kind of extrapolate them forward rather than just looking at year over year, because we probably are at the beginning, I think, of seeing the tariff effects. Now, that said, I still believe that it's like 95% that the Fed will start lowering interest rates in their next meeting because of the slow growth rate. Here is a survey of professional forecasters. It's a little bit dated. It's May, but what you can see is if it compares the first half of 2025 actual versus the second half forecast, and you can see that the consensus forecast is pretty much for things to continue as they have been in almost all respects, growth rate, inflation, you name it. And then the 2026 forecast does not see the economy going crazy, but it sees it doing a little bit better than 2025. Now, I think what this stuck out to me is being, I didn't realize this, but as you know, the Constitution rests the authority to control trade with Congress, and then Congress occasionally passes bills that say under certain circumstances, the president has the authority. Well, there's this International Emergency Economic Powers Act that almost all of tariffs trumps. He's using this as the authority, that there's a national emergency. This has been challenged by, I think, 11 states in one suit and a bunch of private companies in another that felt they were damaged by an unconstitutional act, that there really is no national emergency. The lower courts have ruled in their favor in two separate cases. The circuit court, the appellate court, is asking very tough, semi-hostile questions to Trump. So I think they're going to come down where they affirm that it's unconstitutional and will go to the Supreme Court. But the interesting thing is, if it ended up that those tariffs that were imposed under the authority of IEEPA, there's my tongue twister, if they in fact are unconstitutional, the average effective tariff rate goes from about 17, 18% to 4%. So that's such a huge, so in other words, there's really a lot riding on this thing. And I think the circuit courts are going to rule the same way the district courts did, and it's going to bump up to the Supreme Court. Now, I don't know if they're going to sit on it for years or if they're going to rule, but there's a lot riding on that case. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kelly.
Well, fantastic stuff. Love that data. That is some fantastic research. Okay, if you have time for a few questions, if you have any questions, go to the Q&A box and pop them in the Q&A. We'll go check the chat real quick and see if there is something there. And Maureen has added some greetings and salutations, and also the information on the Kern Biz program. Also, looking for a question here, we see the business turnaround strategies with our Webinar Wednesday Alumni of the Week. Also, some other programs coming up, other information. I don't see a question there. So if you have a question, and we do have one right now, it's, do you think AI will have a greater impact on the economy than Trump's tariffs? Boy, you can go about anywhere with that one, can't you, Doctor?
Yes, definitely. But I think also, I think AI is an area that I think is one of the major goals of the whole tariff negotiations to make sure that the United States is really in a position to that will be a game changer. So I think it's embedded in the tariff negotiations, and a lot of it can be viewed through the lens that will this particular change strengthen our position with respect to future AI or not. And all the dominoes line up that is a major concern. So I think in a way, they're part of the same thing.
Okay, next question. Wonderful comment. Thank you, Dr. Teasdale. Mr. Evans, thank you. Fantastic information. You showed the tariff revenue is an estimate of the impact on other tax revenues from the reduction in GDP and jobs predicted.
Is there an estimate? Actually,
so let me repeat the question.
Okay.
You showed the tariff revenues. Is there an estimate of the impact on other tax revenues from the reduction in GDP and jobs predicted?
Yes, I think if I remember right, the difference is between 2.7 trillion over 2 years to 2.2 trillion. So the negative spillovers are roughly $500 billion over 10 years.
Great stuff. Okay, so let's see, maybe time for another question or two. Are there government programs, tax credits, or grants that can help small businesses adapt to higher cost from tariffs? Well, let me take that one, Doctor.
All right.
Really, when we talked about, being in great financial shape, I would hope some of these manufacturing businesses or retailers, importers got in line and maybe got some nice credit lines. So I think a credit line would be something that would be really beneficial for a business to help them weather the tariffs. As far as any grants or other programs, I really don't see that. And really don't see that coming, at least at this time. But it's something to keep our eye on, definitely.
Oh, there is one other possibility in terms of why the prices are not going up as much as we would have thought they would. And that is there are a lot of exemptions in there, in terms of products being exempted from the tariff. And many of those exemptions are based on the knowledge that had they not been made, they would have a significant effect on inflation. So it could be that people are overestimating how much the price level will go up based on not carefully looking at where those exemptions are being made from the tariff.
Okay, great. One last question is, Dr. Evans, may I have a copy of your presentation? Now, I might add that as a attendee of Webinar Wednesday, you will get an email that will have this presentation in it with the slide presentations. So could somebody get a copy of your presentation, or is it proprietary?
Do you think we could do the NVIDIA thing where I get a 15%?
That's a cut.
I don't know if it's a cut of what, but
he wants a cut. The doctor wants a cut.
No, you're welcome to have the presentation. My email address, I don't check my campus email very often, but it's mevans@csub.edu. But if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them once you get the presentation.
Or, I have a copy of the presentation. You can always reach out to me also. Okay, and as always, just fantastic research. Love the research, Doctor. Love the fact that our time's up.
Oh, was that question from Tony Robertson?
That question is from Tony Robertson, and I believe he's a former student of yours.
He is, and hello, Tony.
Tony, hello. Okay, well, that's going to wrap us up for Webinar Wednesday number 354. We'll be back very soon with Webinar Wednesday 355. For Dr. Mark Evans, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll be back soon. Everybody have a great week. Goodbye, everybody.